Welcome back, folks. Good morning, good evening, good night, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Thank you very much for joining us again. And I kind of feel like I begin half of these with an apology, but I am going to apologize again because I had to rush away last time and I don't want to explain myself there, and I'm probably not going to because it's kind of understandable what I'm talking about. You can read between the lines, and reading between the lines is going to become very important today, as we'll see. But when I talk about aligning myself, I am talking about breathing in time with the same breaths that the stalkers take. I feel like I'm aligning myself with them, and I am aligning myself with the presence. And it's the only time that allows me to rest and feel rested. I'm constantly a little hollowed out, but as I mentioned the last time we were here, there is that normality to the horror. And I said I would never let that happen to me, but here we are. But I am only riding it until it's time to get off the fucking crazy train. Hopefully that will be understandable by the time I finish up today. But that's what I had to go away and I had to do. I had to sleep and I had to dream the dreams that it wants me to dream. But I am fighting. I'm not just beaten down. I am fighting. Believe me, I am. So let's continue with where I left off last time and talk about what we found on the website for the Society for Historical and Cultural Research. It's important to say before I begin here that everything that I'm doing at the moment is released on a delay. Ever since I found out that there are real people watching me, there are real people aware of me, and they've been using quite mundane ways to do so. We have set up a kind of proxy desktop that the stalkers and whoever the fuck else, like I don't know who else is in there, Santa Claus maybe, I don't know, like whoever else has got their fingers in my privacy, who cares anymore? At this point, who cares? Who gives a damn? Like, you know, people complain about like, oh, if you put those Alexas around, like anyone could hear. I'm so far beyond caring like how much information anybody has about me, because it feels like they know more about me than I know about myself at this point. So I don't care about that. What matters is that they get given a false impression of it, and that allows me to actually work elsewhere. So I am no longer giving them information. They are, and this is what I talk about when I say I have to fight back. These are the small ways we can do it. These are small ways I can do it. I can show them what I want to show them. And at the moment, I'm showing them incredibly boring things. But behind the scenes, myself and admin are also looking at very boring things. As I said, when admin looked at the website for the Society for Historical and Cultural Research, it was just another amateurish site with a hint of professional polish to it. Multiple sections, kind of tagline explaining that they're looking into the patterns to discover like the oral and hidden history of humanity. Very broad stuff, nothing that helps. On their about page, there's a huge picture of a black and white stately home in northern England, in black and white. tastefully shot with impeccable gardens. Every picture on the page that works, because there are a lot of broken links there, tagged with a room from the estate, talking about the history there. Just a lovely thing. Vatia House, it was called, where the society is ostensibly based, with offices globally. I'd never heard of this. It's not surprising. The whole country is littered with these kind of places, with their own history and their own kind of background. It's impossible that unless you specifically make it your career or it's your big nerd thing, you will not know every single stately home in this country. You will not know every manor. So this classy black and white picture of a stately home is nestled into the banks of a river, completely topping the page. And like I say, the grandeur of it was somewhat undermined by all the broken links. And the history of the house was the longest individual section on the site. And now I'm going to do this because it's just going to give you the best sense of just how dull this site is. But it is also very important. So I want you to listen carefully to this, but also don't fall asleep. Don't expect me to take you on a thrill ride here. So here's the rundown. It begins with, "This is our story," as a tagline. Within Vatia House, a venerable institution and mainstay of the local landscape, there are many groups dedicating to furthering enlightenment and anthropological pursuits through the stories we tell ourselves and our children. Formerly owned by the West Franks family, its land has since been bequeathed to the Society for Cultural and Historical Research. Typo. A mistake right there in the middle of their own page. The gardens. Over many years, the scions of Vatia House developed a keen interest in gardening, and this tradition lives on to this day. Surrounding the renovated halls is a renowned garden, rising up from the muck and the mud. Climbing roses, hydrangeas, and clematis blanket the grounds in a delightful riot of colour. It must be seen to be believed. The villa. Alongside the gardens, there is an ancient Roman fresco unearthed in the early 20th century. This is believed to have been the inspiration for the family's patronage of history, as they sought out more knowledge and information about the ruins of a Roman villa on their property. It attracted a great deal of interest from the great and the good, who could not believe their eyes at just how clear the picture was. It was a significant historical endeavour that helped to end a popular misconception that within Roman culture, cruelty was commonplace. The library. As part of this greater dedication to learning, the West Franks established a library for enhancing the study and understanding of regional history. Dedicated to dispelling lies, it grew to be a monumental collection that spanned such topics as agriculture and the bloodlines of the nobility, all the way through to esoteric pursuits such as occult practices and rituals. The Rebellion. In 1907, the family was hosting a gathering of patrons of the arts, a regular event, but one that was of great importance as it would reveal to many the results of years of study and potentially change what was commonly held as truth regarding Roman settlements in the British Isles. This was supposed to be the pinnacle of the family's achievements, but in a shocking event nobody could have expected, the servants turned upon the family and their guests. They were poisoned by cowards, and those who escaped this wicked fate were murdered. The whole family and delegations from nearby districts, scientists and historians from across Europe, and as far away as the Americas, were all killed before a fire was set to hide the massacre, and the house was razed to the ground. The criminals were hunted down, and while many were caught, others escaped. None of them would ever tell the truth about what happened or why they turned on their masters. While it is almost impossible to fathom these heinous crimes, there was justice. To this day, we still fight to preserve the West Franks' dedication to history and order. So, just a pretty grim story, right? But broad enough not to draw any emotional reaction whatsoever. There's no details about who these people are. It's just perfect written copy for a boring site like this. I need to get myself a little drink of water here because reading all that out has parched me. There we go. So, apologies again. So after that, admin flicked through the other sites. She read that, saw exactly what I saw there, and what you probably took away from that is that it's just a whole lot of nothing. So she flicked through the sections for funding, which, here's the line there. The Society for Historical and Cultural Research, written correctly here, is funded by engaged and enthusiastic lovers of history who share a passion for knowledge. We will never allow ourselves to be beholden to corporations, but receive regular funding from funding set aside to support our mission from committed partners. It's just badly written, like across the entire thing. It's so amateur, careless, where you would see galas or fundraising pictures, there was very little of, there was none of that. Thinking about it. Actually, there's no pictures of people anywhere on the site. No happy smiling faces. Even stock photos, those kind of ghoulish stock photos of people with like too wide grins. None of those. Without the human touch and with all the spelling mistakes, the grammar, it just felt unfinished. And the notable members section was completely blank. The Contact Us page, which is the bit that we were interested in, it had the words placeholder in all caps next to the numbers and email. So absolutely useless, in other words. Their project page is something more impressive. It's a listing of articles detailing projects, investigating a variety of, if I'm going to be frank, fucking weird things. So there was no actual historical projects here. There was no cultural projects. And I know in their About page, they talk about, looking into the oral history, all fancy stuff and whatever, but there was nothing in the project page which actually had anything to do with that. So the main thing they had was, like on the top of the page, they talked about hauntings. Like the first thing on that's hauntings. And the blog linked to it says, through research and experience, we've created classifications and patterns. And then underneath that, there's like a list. It's a bullet pointed list of various types of hauntings, from like poltergeists to like spirits and, possessions, and so on and so forth. On the other pages, for example, again, like so on others, it's like creatures and events, things beyond and next to our world. Dreams has a section, and every single one, nothing concrete, nothing detailed, no names of who've done this study or dates, just numbered bullet points underneath for somebody to, I would assume, come in and build on it later. But that never happened. A lot of going through this website feels like if you're on a building site and you've seen the structure being put up around you, but it's not finished yet. It was nothing you couldn't find anywhere else. And it was just a massive disappointment. And at this point, admin started to think that maybe a firefighter friend had just been suffering from cognitive decline and didn't have the key to wider understanding, but she wasn't about to give up on it. She could feel there was something about this that she hadn't found yet. Just like with the firefighters' posts, there was something being communicated and she wasn't seeing it. It was just off from her understanding. So she grabbed a pizza, she grabbed a lot of caffeine, she stepped away, she took a deep breath, and then jumped back in and gave it another pass. So when she came back, caffeinated, all ready, full stomach, taking a step away, taking a deep breath, there was something that was kind of stuck to her way of thinking. As she pulled herself away, a word had stuck with her. And it was kind of overused on some of the pages there. And it was just the word patterns. Even in places where it wouldn't make sense, she would read it. And it was fairly consistent, and it stood out to her because I'd been talking about patterns to her. I've been talking about the patterns of the creatures that I experienced on the train. I don't like thinking about them, but when I described that to her and how similar they were, and the rhythm of breath, the alignment. Sorry, even thinking about it, I don't like it. Whenever I do that, I would mention it to her and I would describe it as patterns. So that word was kind of in her memory already. And it's not really, so you think about it, patterns is a very common word, but it's not something you're going to hear or say every single day. But she'd heard it so much that it kind of stuck with her. And so she started looking for patterns on the page. And she went to the About Us page and immediately saw something. And she tried to resize the page. And this is our story page with black and white images of a stately home and a smorgasbord of working and broken pictures. And whenever she resized the page, the images would always align with the text. The images would shrink as well. Everything would always line up together. So there was no way to accidentally make it so you somehow ended up with different words next to the text. They were always there. And from that, she realized there was a kind of rudimentary code there, a very basic pattern where if she cut text and put it together, if that formed working sentences, if those fragments formed working sentences, she was making headway. And so she started copying and pasting the text, which was aligned next to working images only. Nothing that was in the middle of a gap. Nothing that was next to broken links. And that's how she started. She eliminated any words or fragments of a sentence that strayed against broken images. And what remained actually made some sense, but it wasn't complete. So she changed up the order of some of those sentence fragments using the text in the captions of the images as a guide. And those formed full sentences. And it all became clearer and clearer until she didn't need to look for a guide. Have you ever gotten so ahead of yourself in realizing the answer to something that you just do it on instinct? That's what happened for her. It just became clear. Without thinking, she reordered the fragments, and this is what remained from the overall text. This is what she pulled from it. This is our story. Within Vatia House, a venerable institution and mainstay of Roman culture, cruelty was commonplace. Over many years, the scions of Vatia House developed a keen interest in occult practices and terrible rituals. Rising up from the mud and the muck, the servants turned upon the family and their guests, and the house was razed to the ground. There was justice. We still fight. And it was just another step in the process. There was a story between the lines and the hidden text, and despite having the same basic thrust of the overall story, revealed a lot through omission. Vatia was Roman, it was not English. So what did that mean for the house itself? So the admin went off site and began to search for Vatia House, but there was nothing. There was no Wikipedia page, there were no image links, there weren't even any socials. The pages related to the society didn't even mention Vatia House anywhere. The only link to the location was a maps link with no info, no reviews, nothing. Just the same image from the society's website. And so she clicked through into satellite view, and there was nothing there. wasn't even a ruin. There wasn't even like a kind of, a barn. It was just fields by the side of a road. Vatia House did not exist. But the House of Vatia did. The only things that came up in the search were translated letters from the Roman philosopher Seneca, which was not relevant to us. If you read through them, there's nothing there. Even reading between the lines, an admin told me that she spent a lot of time delving through this, and she spent too much time on that page. There was nothing there. But also, I referred to a ludus in Capua in ancient Rome. It was a gladiator school owned by the Lanista Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus Vatia, and in 73 BC, it became the epicenter of the Third Servile War. So Vatia was also known as Gaius Lentulus Batiatus, and it was within his house, under his roof, that the rebellion was sparked that kicked off this whole war. And the rebel gladiator that led that rebellion was Spartacus. Now, I still can't wrap my head around what I'm reading here, because them trying to say that their organization stretches back over 2,000 years to a slave rebellion, is it allegorical? Is it another lie like all the half-truths that they have on the website that spiral into more general falsehoods? I legitimately don't know, but that is pretty much explicitly what this leads to. It is telling you to pull away what's there and look at what they're really saying. So you can take it at that. Maybe it doesn't change anything for me. It doesn't change anything for me or what I need from them. So what the admin told me was she thinks that this whole site is a test, and it's not a deep test. It's not an intellectual exercise, but it's a way to see if you have the reasoning power to see beyond what they're saying on the surface and find these simple patterns, right? They are not, it's not an incredible deductive feat to go through this, but here, I'll tell you what happened next, because she didn't tell me after this. She gave me this, she told it to me, and then said, I need to look into the rest for myself. And this wasn't her backing away out of fear. I got the sense that she respected this test and that it was for me. It was a test for me and it was not a test for her, and that her participation in any further way would be wrong somehow. That's just the impression that I got at the time. And it was difficult to process the site. It's so outdated and it was so slow. There's no way to contact anybody. There was no way to do anything with it. And frankly, any of that non-information admin had already discovered. I pored over it for hours. I saw nothing. I did more searches online. I read more into Spartacus and his rebellion and his generals and everything that happened. Fascinating history, completely irrelevant to what I was really looking for here. So I couldn't see anything. So I decided to do something drastic and pretty foolish. And I did it. The admin said to me that she'd kind of seen this stuff almost on instinct. And so I kind of did this in the same way. I stood up, hurried over to the back door, and without any pause, just swung the door up and forced myself outside. And I took deep, painful breaths. And I would listen to the birds, and they were so loud. Like, so loud on my ears. It felt just ringing. Like, their songs were... Oh. And I listened to the wind in the leaves, and it was like tinnitus. It was too much. Everything hurt, and I struggled to stand there but it was like cold water splashed over my face, and I just threw myself backwards through the door and slammed the door shut. And instantly after doing that, I thought about the classification system on the site. The way the blog there talked about patterns and identifying paranormal events and situations, and it, that clunky, incomplete, useless part of the site, but it was just another type of language, right? It was a code. For me, for example, and I'm going to run through this, and it's going to sound like I'm absolutely... This is some, kind of Elvis lives on the moon and controls the lizard people shit, but... So, if I go on the site and I click in and I click on for sleep, which is number 6 on the list, I click into it, and beneath it in the blog there's the bullet points under clarification and classification. So, what things are there about sleep? Nightmares that become real, blackouts. So I add them. Nightmares that become real, 2, blackouts, 4. So 6, 2, 4. But sleep's only part of my concern, right? So there's another section, and under it is unknowable. And that's 8. And I see that there's a nature aspect, a family aspect, and an emotional aspect in the bullet points. And I add those numbers to the list, but it's still nonsense, right? So I look at the top of every page, and the placeholder paragraph there advises to list the below when it's expanded upon in the order of importance. So, for example, in terms of the unknowable horrors that I'm dealing with, the most important aspect to me is that family aspect, because it is very raw, it's very real. Second to that is the emotional aspect, and then the nature aspect of it. So I put those in. But it's still nonsense, because how can you sort any of that out? So I then apply everything to the whole. So I put the unknowable at the very top of my concerns, followed by sleep, and then at the very bottom of it, I put occult. But it still doesn't work. But then I notice every single page has a 0. Every one of these bullet pointed lists has a 0 there, and it's left blank. And why would it be there unless it needs to be there? So I use it as a full stop between the sections, which gives you a string of digits and a numerical code. 817906240441. And those numbers, gibberish, and everything I've just said, gibberish. But if you know the code, it reads out as, I'm dealing with an unknowable horror related to my emotions and my family, with a nature aspect that affects my sleep. It's making my nightmares real and leaving me with blackout. There is occult activity, and they are very active. It blew me away. This didn't just feel right. I knew that this was right. In those numbers, there was a story, and it was not just my brain throwing things together and making things up. It was a very clear classification and numerical code that, when read back, detailed exactly what I was dealing with. So I'm absolutely reeling from this. I'm seeing the fucking Matrix, I've got like numbers flying around my head. And I had this moment for a split second where I'm like, is this what a conspiracy theorist feels like? Because it feels pretty good, and I can see why they fall down those rabbit holes that they do. But no, this was logical. It was in front of me. It was real. And immediately another thought came to me. Why even have Vatia House on maps? Somebody had to put it there because it doesn't exist. So I clicked through to the empty field with nothing in that immediate location. Just grass. No sign of anything else. But if you click into Street View, there is a man standing on the other side of the fence, exactly where Vatia House is supposed to be. And it's an older black guy in hiking gear, and he's standing in a field, and he's giving a big thumbs up, and with his other hand, he's pointing up to the sky. And I don't feel creeped out when I see this. I don't feel afraid. I don't feel like, oh my God, there was nothing sinister about this man. There was nothing ominous about this guy. He was encouraging. And I felt electric from that. It felt unbelievable to see somebody and know that that's why they're doing what they're doing. Because if you found this, it's not random. It was, I can't even describe it, the happiness, the kind of life it just pumped back into me. It was like getting CPR on my freaking soul. But I clicked through on the dates that the pictures have been taken. If you ever see like Google Maps, you can click through and see what things were like, stretching back like 12 years ago in some instances. And so I did that. And he was there in each of them, younger and younger, giving the thumbs up. And the next one, the same again and again and again. He would be back there, and he wanted to be seen. He wanted people to see him. And I know from his pose, and if you ever seen a picture of somebody, you can get their energy. So Google Pictures and like Google Pictures on Google Maps, they blur people's faces because they just can't get consent, right? His face is blurred, but you can get the energy from that. From this blurred face, I can tell that it's a positive energy. I could have fucking cried because it was reassurance, and I was so relieved. And I was so relieved that I almost missed it, and it was the most obvious thing of all here. And it literally made me laugh when I noticed it. I actually let out like a little like guffaw. He was pointing up on the screen, and he was pointing up and to the left, his right, and he was pointing at the coordinates for the house. So on the screen, if you go on a street view, you'll see the coordinates at the top left. And it wasn't immediately obvious, but it, kind of, if you think about it for a second, like what's the logical thing here? The digits were 6 digits on the kind of y-axis, which is a landline phone number. And if I put the area code in for the county that this place is in, I had a phone number that I could call. And I did not know if it would work, but I was just shaking to try. And I hit up the admin instantly. I messaged, and she told me that she'd found that. But she had to know if I could reason it out for myself, because it felt important that I could. For some reason, it felt important that I reason it out. And so we discussed back and forth for a moment, and I decided to call the number. And I've recorded that here.
Hello and welcome to the Society for Historical and Cultural Research. Please follow instructions using our automated system to direct you to the correct department. Firstly, we will need your name.
Spartacus.
Thank you. Please enter your concern code followed by hash. If you do not have a concern code, then please refer to our website. Thank you. Finally, should we contact you on this number?
Yes. Yes.
Is it a mobile?
Yes.
Thank you. Please look out for a text message with further details. We appreciate you contacting the Society for Historical and Cultural Research and would like to wish you all the best.
And with that, there was nothing to really do but wait. Okay, so it's been about 4 hours since I called them and left my details. I just a minute ago got a text message asking if I'm available for a call. I replied yes. They replied back asking me to set a timer for 82 seconds, and they're going to call me in 10 minutes. So I'm going to try and record this. Hello? Okay. What do you mean you can't help me? Wait, what? What does that even mean? So what am I actually dealing with? Can you tell me that? Screamster? I can't hear you. What's happening? Okay, I have a notepad. I have a pen. Okay. Lamb jalfrezi, mushroom pilau rice, Peshwari naan, 7 p.m, £7.30. What? Okay, yes. Okay, I can do that. I won't contact anybody else. Okay. Can you tell me one more thing, please? Can I win? Can I win this? Is there any... Oh, for fuck's sake. Oh my God. So, he just cut off there right at the end. I made a note. I need to call 7 p.m. on Friday. Shalimar restaurant, mushroom pilau rice, a lamb jalfrezi, a mushroom pilau rice, and a garlic naan from the Shalimar restaurant at 7 p.m. It's not just going to be food. I have to put the order in. Okay, I've calmed down a little bit now because that was incredibly frustrating. I listened back to the audio. You can't hear them. There was a lot of distortion, a lot just covering them up. And I think the majority of it is, you can kind of infer how it went. I'm going to have to explain like a couple of things here. So I said hello and they said they're on a strict time limit. I tried to ask who they are and they said there's no time. They can't help me. I am too far along. I tried to speak again. They told me not to interrupt. It's not about being rude. It's about necessity. That he can't help. Well, not him specifically. He said we, so the society, the organization. He said they're stretched too thin, but he's going to do what he can. And that I shouldn't be disheartened, which... ridiculous. I'm incredibly disheartened, but at the same time somebody said don't be disheartened. This was not somebody beating me down. It was somebody offering me something, so I do have to take that in the spirit it was given. I asked what it was, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, but as he spoke, there was a lot of interference. The line became very crackly, but it was something like Schreidiva, Scream Stealer, and then they tried to say something else. It all got kind of picked up. It came out of that. I said that I couldn't hear what he was saying, and they followed with, "It's already creeping." I don't know what that means, but the interference was getting louder, so I'm going to make a leap there and assume that's what it was. And I was told on Friday at 7 p.m, I contact a restaurant, a Shalimar restaurant. I order a lamb jalfrezi, a mushroom pilau rice, and a Peshwari naan. And then I tip the driver £7.30. At which point I was incredibly confused, but I made the note, which is why it suddenly sounds like I work for a restaurant. It was wild. I was told it won't just be a meal that I'm getting. We're almost out of time. This is when he put a hurry up on it. He said, don't contact anybody else except the curry house, and time my call to 67 seconds. And when I asked if I can win. He said, "You're probably going to die." Which, what the fuck can you do with that? Jesus Christ.